aboard!
Hey, what's up, everybody? You're listening to Cannabis Karaoke, where we ask you to grab the mic and tell your story. Get inside info from today's most interesting cannabis pioneers, and from the first note to the end of the song, listen up as you get to hear the stories of success on Cannabis Karaoke. Well.
Hi.
Hi.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you, too. What have you been up to?
I've been traveling my little ass around doing the podcast in different cities.
Well, okay, so we're getting a little ahead of ourselves.
Well, you asked.
No, I know. So first of all, I would like to welcome lovely Joe to the show. First of all, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what you're involved with, and then we can kind of go into the question mode.
Totally. Thanks for having me. Nice to be in the studio. I'm Johanna Nuding. I am the founder of Casually Baked. It is a cannabis lifestyle brand based in Oakland. And I'm a cannabis lifestyle guide. I help people on board into our culture and cannabis for wellness. And basically, I'm monetizing my lifestyle. I'm getting paid to be myself.
Isn't that everyone's dream? Well, actually, it's not.
It should be everyone's dream.
You said a really interesting word that I've never heard, which is cannabis lifestyle guide.
I made it up.
What is that? It really is intriguing.
Yeah. So when I moved to California 5 years ago, I was on a quest to get paid to be myself. I'd taken a midlife retirement in Bologna, Italy, and had dreamed up where and what I would be doing. And so obviously cannabis drew me to California, and I attended the SoCal High Times Cannabis Cup. And it was my very first one. I was so excited. And I had money burning a hole in my pocket. I wanted to buy a t-shirt or a hoodie or something. And I just didn't see anything that was representing who I was and what my cannabis culture was. And so I got home and my wheels were turning. And I'm constantly fielding calls and questions from people, or how do I get my medical card? Or now I've gotten my medical card and now I'm scared to go into a dispensary. And so this was happening to me all the time. And I thought I could make this a business. Like, people need help. Like, this industry is so overwhelming. People don't know how to use cannabis, when to use cannabis, or, women hate to not know what they're doing, or they don't like to know what's going on. They don't like to be new at something.
I don't think a lot of people have a hard time being new to a space, and I think I'm just going to hold on to that phrase because I feel like that's a whole new category of the space that we really haven't talked about. So that kind of leads us into the reason for this podcast with, Cannabis Karaoke. The whole idea is like, what makes you stand up to the mic and belt out that horrible song that you are clapping for yourself inside your head? Because really, let's face it, you just kind of captured it in that last little answer, which is you're getting paid to be who you are. And I feel like that's a lot of what happens in cannabis. I feel like, well, at least in this space, never before in all the businesses I've done, and I know you've been in a lot of different verticals as well, that you get to kind of really pick what you feel like you want to do.
Yeah. Well, I think in this industry, there's so much happening that we truly do have the opportunity to choose the things that bring us joy in the industry and focus on those. Because I could make money 1,000 ways in this industry, and a hell of a lot more money than I'm making right now. However, I am committed to changing the face of the cannabis culture, and I'm the person to do it. And I am doing the things that I love, and I'm getting to just basically live my life and then tell people about it on a podcast.
But there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. I think you kind of, like, let's be realistic. Cannabis is a very failure-oriented industry when it comes to who's making it and who's not making it and who's faking it.
Yeah.
Right? And so it's really more about, like, perseverance, having that internal desire to change stigma. And a lot of people say that. That's why I'm in. It's like I've always wanted to be somewhere where I could tell a story that would help somebody else out. And what a better place than cannabis. So we've stuck to media, and we've decided to help other people tell their stories. But you're actually more directly related to consumers and to people that are kind of curious, that want some direction, if you will. And that doesn't come without some responsibility, because recommendation in this space is everything. So how do you qualify who you recommend or who you'll work with? Because I know you're pretty white glove, high standard, not in a snobby way, but just the best. You want to be the best, and I've always appreciated that about you. But like, what is that measure for you, and how do you know? Because it's like you close your eyes and the whole thing spins around you. So then, like, what are you grabbing out and bringing to your consumers, and what moves you?
Yeah. So after my dad listened to a couple of my podcasts, he told me, he said, Johanna, you have a gift for touching people's hearts and like getting people to talk and to open up about things. And I feel like in the cannabis space, it is so aggressive and there is so much stuff coming at us. And I do think there are a lot of people that are just in it for the money, or they're the movers and shakers and fakers. And my job in this space that I hold onto so deeply is that I am always going to be bringing messages from a place of love and kindness and compassion, and trying to empower people. I say I'm in the business of can of confidence, because if I can put out this message and do it in a way that not only a housewife or a retired businesswoman or an emerging 20-something trying to figure life out, like, I know how to speak to all of those people in their own way and get them to understand something that is really pretty complex and nuanced. And it's not about trying to download a bunch of information and facts. And it's like helping people understand their why. Like, why am I using cannabis? Why do I think this is going to help me? How do I get in tune with my body and my community and my farmers? And, it's at the end of the day, it's all love. And, and for me, I feel like that's the essence of what my show is and what my brand is. It's like this just happy, joyful playground for people to explore cannabis. And I think it's, I'm not associated with a particular brand. I'm not endorsed to tell a certain message. It's just, let's just run around and play in the cannabis fields and see what we learn and see what you're inspired to do. And I try to inspire people to, lead the cannabis for wellness lifestyle that feels good to them,
I think that's sometimes, well, first of all, the cannabis space hands down by far is focused on minorities, focused on women having a major role in this space, proper marketing. I mean, it is nice to see that vein. Tell me a little bit about, like, where you see people being misled and why that drive. Because I think the reason you want to be such a medium, if you will, to people to help them understand, because there's a ton of them.
Yeah.
And I think there's going to be quite a few people for quite some time that are looking to have a trusting relationship. And there's other people that are kind of on our same path of like I want to change the stigma as well. I'm a functional person that uses cannabis on a daily basis. Like, not everybody is coined stoner extraordinaire, you know? And so when you see things like, and you don't have to throw shade on anybody, but like, just why do you feel like you want to wrap a protective cocoon around some of these people? Because I see how you operate. You're very caring. You really are, genuinely. What drives you to want to like help these people out? Because a lot of people are going to say, "Oh, you're in it for the money, or you're in it for the fame because you're on podcast 1022."
Yeah.
But there's a trigger that I want Joe to speak to that can help people understand really what you're all about.
Well, I think one of the first thoughts that came to mind when you were saying that is being home in Texas, visiting my grandmother, and seeing this entire windowsill filled with pill bottles.
Yeah.
And half of them felt like they were to help with the side effects of the other half of them, you know?
Oh, it's a daisy chain of take this to fix that, to fix this to fix that. I mean, my dad, my dad lost his battle with opiates, if you will, because that kind of regimen of that pill, like just they're so trusting of their doctors and they don't even
Yes.
realize that their doctors are being like persuaded, I guess is a soft word I could use, to prescribe certain medications at a certain clip.
Right.
And it's hard to change that mentality. Why is it so hard? You know, if that's your trigger, what's your challenge and why?
Well, so for me, it is trying to shake people up from that construct and introducing the idea of, hey, you know, cannabis has the opportunity to, you know, my grandmother hates taking pills. She fucking hates it.
Though. They say that.
Well, but
they're
I'm saying
so
like
wrapped up in it that they
right.
can't stop.
Well, exactly. So it's like the idea of, okay, I want to show you that there's another way and empower you to talk to your doctor about it. And the only way to do that is to really educate people. So when I see something on a shelf that says CBD plus, and I turn around the bottle and I see that it's made with hemp seed oil, I'm like, you lying motherfuckers. There are no cannabinoids in hemp seed, but you're charging $50 for this, or these multi-level marketing companies that are doing it and charging $125 for a 1-week supply. Those are the things that enrage me, that make me want to just download this information and just allow people to feel smarter when they're reading labels, to understand what a certificate of analysis is. And if you
That's
do
COA
click on,
in
yes,
the world.
the COA, if you click on that QR code, do you even know how to fucking read it?
Right.
You know, there's all of these things that as an industry, we're saying, well, we're doing this stuff, we're providing this information, but it's complicated if you're in the Gen Pop and you're not part of the cannabis world. So I feel like my mission is to make this stuff palatable, make it easier to understand, make people more confident to feel good about cannabis as they have about using meds from their doctor for the last 30, 40, 50, 80 years of their life.
Yeah, because a lot of these snake oil, if you will, a lot of these people that are kind of just taking advantage of the gullible side of cannabis consumption aren't putting out the precursors that these pills have to put out, right? So it's almost like worse, right? We have these kind of veins of this taking place in our industry where people are misleading people, and it's hard to get that education to the people because it's funny because they'll almost people buy into stuff so fast. That's that gullible piece I think also drives the pill component that, well, I got to trust my doctor. My doctor is telling me. Kind of same thing with the brand. It's so important for a brand to build that trust with that consumer, but not at the back of deceiving them, you know? So it sounds like, give me some examples. So I know we talked a little bit off the podcast, I guess, off air, and you had some new ideas. Can we share those ideas without getting too detailed about some of the ways you want to take, so eloquently stated, getting paid to do what you do, with some of your podcasts, with also some of this new opportunity? Do you want to share? Can we share some of that?
Yeah. So as I've been building this business over the last 5 years, I have not been able to travel, and traveling is kind of my thing, you know.
And you've been traveling a little bit lately.
So I've started picking that back up. I looked up one day and I realized that my passport had expired, and I had a fucking meltdown.
Wow.
So I went off to Italy last fall and to have a reunion with a bunch of my friends. And I took my portable podcast kit with me and recorded an episode of the show there. And, you know, cannabis culture is a big deal to me. I care about how you grind your weed. I care whether or not we are smoking single strain or if we are smoking a blend. You know, I care that, you know, the piece that we smoke out of, like ritual and the culture is a big deal to me. And when I lived in Italy, I learned very quickly that their cannabis culture is different than ours. And so I find it fascinating to travel and explore the cannabis culture everywhere I go. So as I've been working, I'm kind of exploring some deals in Canada. And so I took my podcasting equipment with me when I was there. And so I'm starting to do some fun things where I'm exploring the cannabis culture around the world, kind of opening up some opportunities for people to see what the modern cannabis culture looks like and how it's evolving in these different countries and different states. Because California is its own beast and Colorado's totally different. And I was just in Portland, and Jesus Christ, that's way fucking different than here. So,
Man, the Oregon, and it's really down to regulation by the government. They made some zigs when they should have zagged, and now prices are like below anywhere else in the country.
they just have a surplus of flour.
Yeah.
And of course, there's so many farmers that, will end up going under. I mean, right now it's great for product developers because they can,
Right.
Have larger profit margins on the products that they're producing. But, ultimately there is going to be constant change happening in each of these states as we kind of get our feet and really get grounded in what's happening. And I'm doing some help with a policy advisor in DC. I'd met her at Circular Summit. It's a entrepreneurial conference for women. And, they're trying to make sure that they're learning from what's happening in all of these states and that they are helping craft federal laws that don't fall into these same pits as we have now. So, that's another thing as I'm layering in and traveling, it's exploring the culture, but also talking to the local business owners and brands and dispensaries and finding out like what's working for you here, what's not. Like, what are you seeing happening other places that you wish could happen here? Because as I'm learning all of this stuff, not only do I want to share it with my audience, but I'm also trying to help move our industry forward.
I think the underlying tone there is we're still in diapers in this industry. We're still learning.
Totally.
There's still a lot of change that's going to come down the line. So I want to kind of go back to a little bit to some of the projects that you're working on. One of them in particular, Garden Society.
Yes.
Right. I'd like to know a little bit about, because one thing as being a blessed white male we don't fail to have, we don't experience the same hurdles or blocks that say minorities or females, women do. And I really do applaud the industry for kind of policing itself at the moment around making sure that, even on a state level regulation wise, they're giving these minority programs preference on these new dispensary licenses. And it's like, all right, most people would call that socialism, but hey, we're actually trying to help out and tie success back to some of the more underserved.
Or in people that have, been
stepped on.
Absolutely ground into the dirt and put in prison.
I've never been asked if I've got weed on me when I get pulled over by a cop.
Yeah.
I've been with my boys who don't smoke weed that have gotten pulled over, and they ask them if they got weed. And I'm like, no, but I do, from the passenger seat. And they never really press on it. I mean, that's a whole nother podcast around
it is. Yeah.
racial inequalities and everything else that we have going on. But I really want you to tell me, because you're a very strong woman.
Yes.
Right? When people meet you, if they don't walk away with that feeling, then you did not get a chance to meet the real Joe. So tell me a little bit about because I know I understand your passion for wanting to cocoon people, and I don't mean that in a bad way, but like help people make decisions, be trusting, learn. Nobody's ever going to comprehend everything that we get to learn by getting it pounded into our head, but you can cut the curve for some people. But you're also very passionate about the female voice in cannabis and really how it's governing the compassionate side, I feel, a little bit more than the, like, let's just make a quick buck and get out. Yeah, and
I try, I try to create opportunities for women. I learned in my sales days that I get to choose my clientele. So I want to make sure that I like the people that I'm working with. And I was approached by the founders of Garden Society, and they had told me, like, we recognize that we need to, potentially do a podcast or something. We need to figure out another way to market ourselves since we have such trouble marketing ourselves as cannabis businesses. And so I have had the opportunity to help them craft an idea for a show. And we are just wrapping up our first season of Garden Society, the podcast. And, I built out a great recording studio, and now I'm able to bring people in and give their voices a larger megaphone and amplify their message. And so this first season of Garden Society, the focus has been on, finding our joy. Like, cannabis is crazy as an industry and as entrepreneurs. And so we have just walked listeners through what it's like to start a business and what it's like to start a business in the cannabis space and what are resources available to you as women and why cannabis is such a great tool, not only for wellness, but also for just relaxing and having a good time, like giving women permission to have fun and find their joy.
Well, I think there's definitely enough focus and advertising on wine and liquor and, other things that portray that, casual, let's be relaxed and party and have a good time. Mm-hmm. When the minute you start mentioning, it's so crazy. I mean, we are coming really far, really fast with the stigma reduction, but we're still not to the point yet where that soccer mom can pull out that joint or that vape. Maybe in California, maybe in Santa Cruz.
Yeah.
But in general, we're still not quite there. You still got to kind of sneak off and take a toke. Beyond, so the complications of Joe. Like, you're not just a media person. You're not just a cannabis, what was it again?
Cannabis lifestyle guide.
Cannabis lifestyle guide. You're also taking your same skill set, the things that you've had success and have had fulfillment around, and you're trying to help other people, such as, I wouldn't say help them, you're producing other people in that same vein. Mm-hmm. What does the future hold for Joe as far as being involved with this? Like, how do you determine the projects that you want to take on, and give some advice to people to try to teach them how to stay in their lane when they need to stay in their lane, but they can be valuable in other resources. Like, you could do 70 different podcasts with your energy on different topics, but instead you're choosing to focus on 2, and then you're still providing that energy out to other people, which I think is phenomenal. It's a very humbling space to come from because most people won't share their secrets.
Yeah.
And you've always been an open book for me, and obviously anything I ever can do for you, I will. But give some advice to people as they're starting to enter the space specific to what you do, and how to build partnerships and how to build relationships and what that means to you.
So I think the most important thing that we can do in life, love, and business is to allow, is to be willing to go with the flow. Like, when people say, make it a great day or have a good day, I'm one of those people that I'm like, let it be a good day.
Sure.
So I think one of the pieces of advice is don't try to force shit. Like, if you are in your flow and you're doing the things that bring you joy, windows and doors of opportunity are opening all around you all the time. And it's being intentional with what you're doing. And just like when you feel good energy with somebody, don't ignore that. Like, listening to our body is one of the most important things that we can do. And I feel like in business, women are downgraded because we have feelings. But I think those feelings are the most powerful guide that we have. And so being able to be in the flow, find people that you work well with, and don't, founder syndrome is very fucking real. And so there's a lot of people, they have an idea and they don't let it be its own moving, living, breathing thing and grow and evolve. They try to just force everything to be this original idea. And if I would have done that 5 years ago, Casually Baked would be nothing like it is now. But I am a firm believer that, whatever my intention is, like to me, I'm like, I am Jopra. I am the Oprah of pot. I am going to bring can of confidence to everyone in the world. Like, that's what I want to do. Now, how I get that done, it's all about just allowing things to happen around me and like making decisions from a place of love, kindness, and compassion. If something feels bad, I don't do it. I mean, it's really as simple as that. And that requires people to be intentional and mindful. And there's a lot of times when we don't want to be intentional and mindful. We just want to overconsume and just get through the day. And to me, every day is a gift, and I'm not getting through it. I am living the fuck out of it.
Hallelujah. Hallelujah. I feel like singing right now. I mean,
Well, it is Cannabis Karaoke. Let's get on it.
It is Cannabis Karaoke.
Jump on it.
Oh my
Jump
goodness.
on
I
it.
am thinking about throwing a musical element into it as I go. Like, okay, I've picked a song today. You need to sing it. Here's the prompter. Knock yourself out. Because I do believe everything you just said that is really about how uncomfortable are you making yourself every day?
Yes.
Like, are you failing every day? We put so much emphasis on success that people don't want to wear their L's as well as they wear their W's. And, I'm in the same vein as you. Like, I live every day to its fullest. Now, that doesn't mean, like, some people say, well, I'm only in the present, and you got to know where you're going in the future to be able to exist in the present. But I truly do try to enjoy every single day, every single memory as strongly as I can. I am one that trusts my gut even against the advice of some other people. And sometimes your body can mislead you too. And so I really appreciate how you look at things. And I think that message that is coming out of that is tenacity, perseverance,
Grit, baby.
Grit. Also loving yourself and giving yourself the ability to be uncomfortable, to go ahead and do things that maybe you wouldn't do, but then also to identify them between being a hobby and being a profession. Because I think that's another thing that people kind of can get caught up in this space is like, you've been doing it for a certain amount of time. Do you have the progress you need in order to really go to the next level? So I think that comes from the denial of failure. And the next question I was going to ask you, and you could say whatever you want.
Well,
obviously.
and I do want to jump in one more thing
Go
on
ahead.
that, because I think it's so important for us to focus on what we're great at. And so many of the times we try to do too many things and wear too many hats, and focusing on the thing that you're super good at is always going to eventually bring you success. And I started storytelling when I was in the 3rd grade. Competitive storytelling.
I can only imagine.
And
Shout out to that 3rd grade teacher that survived, Johanna.
And I did prose and persuasive speaking and all of the things. And I was the feature editor of my school paper. I was the sports anchor for my college newscast. Like, I have been telling stories forever. And so when I got here and I'm like, okay, what does it look like to get paid to be myself? If I have to define myself in one word, and I challenge everybody to do this. So if you have to say who you are in one word, what is it? And for me, it was storyteller. And I just was like, okay, how am I going to bring myself and my love of cannabis and my lifestyle and me being a storyteller, what does that look like? And then that's when Casually Baked the podcast happened. That's when me creating the, cannabis class kit and the resource guide and, starting to write for the cannabis lifestyle magazines. Like, I was like, I know that I can make a difference by telling stories.
So easily said. It takes more than that. And what I mean by that is that that's a free fall comment. To go to someone and say, hey, do you? And they're going, I have no idea who I am.
That's why a morning meditation, cannabis infused, of course, is your most important meeting of the day. That's where you find that stuff out. When you get still, you ask yourself that question, you get casually baked, you sit there for 20 minutes, and you don't have to sit there and try to answer it. You just let things come.
It does help to just empty your mind, which brings me to one of my next questions, which is, do you have a daily regimen? Do you how does Joe get pumped to go on the court? Like, so.
Well, so I think as I'm a high achiever, and I think anybody who is a high achiever probably has some sort of a human optimization plan. So,
man, I'm learning. I need a notepad while we're on this podcast to write all these things down.
Good thing we're recording it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to go back
At
and
least
write
I
it
hope
down.
we're
No, we're
recording
recording. That's recording. I could see it.
So, I believe in human optimization. I believe I can live to be 127 years old if I do things right. And I wake up every morning at 5:15. And if I wake up and I need 15 more minutes of sleep, I don't sweat it. I give it to myself. But most of the time I get up, I have a 20-minute cannabis infused meditation. I listen to the 11 minutes of Up First. It's NPR's morning podcast. I don't get bogged down in a lot of news. I don't let myself watch much TV. I cook myself breakfast every morning, and I just give myself this slow morning, and I have 2.5 hours where I catch up on some reading or podcasts that I want, and really plan out my day. I try to organize my day the night before, but then I look at it again with fresh eyes and be like, okay, what do I really have to get done off of this list today? What would make me feel really good, and what can move on to the next day? And then after that, I just let myself be in the flow, and I don't beat myself up when shit doesn't go the way I needed it to go. And, like I was supposed to have another show that was happening, and, the whole reason you and I scheduled this was because I was going to be in the area. Well, shit doesn't always work out, and it's just letting yourself, be and just really having a good perspective and a jovial outlook, and making sure I laugh every day. Like, all of those things are really important to me.
Yeah, I have to say that most people take things I just, people say, you only live once, right? I look at them and go, no, you live every day, you die once.
Yeah.
And so for me, at least what's been always kind of put me in this position of, I think I would have to say when you were sitting there saying, what's a word that describes yourself? I'm like, maniacal, hard to work with. But no, I truly love to tell stories. I mean, that was why I left the NBA, was to start Cannabis Club TV, to tell stories, And so when we met, it was like, oh my gosh, I found this kindred soul that wants to tell stories, wants to help people. And I think another thing that I kind of try to live by, so I kind of have this Teflon skin that it's just like, dude, I'm going to fail 50 times a day as long as one of them's not. I also realize that I can make a fatal mistake and it's all over. I'm not in denial of that.
And even that's okay.
Yeah. So many times we've had things burned down and I'm like, all right, well, let's either rebuild it or move 10 feet over and build there. Like, I guess that is a segue into how does Joe face, like, tell me some of the, like, you've been very nice and flowery and like everything's good and hunky dory and life's peaches, but I know you've gone through some shit. I know you've hit some walls. Share. It doesn't have to be the worst one, and I don't want you to talk shit on anybody, but like, tell me where you thought, fuck, I might not get over this one. Because you're not an entrepreneur, sorry, until you look at yourself in the mirror and go, I suck, like, at what I'm doing right now. I need to be better today. That's my regimen. Every day I look in the mirror and go, were you better today than you were yesterday? All right, let's go do it, and let's be better, What walls have you hit What walls have you hit in life with this passion that you have that you've almost wanted to quit?
Well, I live with my heart on my sleeve, and I have failed more than anybody I have ever known. And I have built up just this really big tolerance for failure. And I don't know, it just hurts less and less every time. And it sets me up for a quick bounce back, I guess. Like I learned to let things go quickly as a child. Like, I see people who can hold grudges forever, and they can't let things go. And, and so I always made an effort to be the person that said I'm sorry first, or that got over, getting my heart broken faster or whatever. And so that's kind of my general mindset. I mean, it is kind of Pollyanna and, rainbows and unicorns and shit.
I love unicorns.
And
if you can't be yourself, be a unicorn.
yes, I have unicorns in my studio. And so the thing that whenever I think of, oh my God, like I can't do this anymore, it's been when I feel the entire pressure of what I'm doing on my own shoulders, because I don't have funding, I'm bootstrapping. I don't have people to pass things off and to get help. And so there have been times where I'm sitting in my studio and it's the third day in a row that I haven't had communication with the outside world, because I'm like deep in the writing and the editing and building out a sales plan and it's all the things that you're doing when you're an entrepreneur, where you're in it, you're building. And, I'm like, my ass is getting jiggly. I haven't been out on a mountain in a while. Like, those are the things where I'm like, is this really what I want? Like, I don't have much of a life outside of this. And when I felt that, and of course the eye twitch was going along with it. And so at that point, that's whenever I was like, I've got to start traveling again, because the only way that I can keep doing this is to bring that life balance back into the equation. I'm giving myself my slow morning. I'm taking all of my supplements. I'm feeding my brain. I'm, eating all the right things, but I'm not spending enough time in nature. I'm not spending enough time with my friends. I'm not spending enough time getting stamps on my passport. How can I add those things back to my life and still have a business? If I can figure that out, I'm going to keep going.
I think that's dead on. I mean, I think, again, that goes back to that free fall of, can you just go out and do something? I mean, I have a hard time working for people. I've tried it twice in my entire life.
Yeah.
Before, and I don't count the, jobs at Burger King and all that stuff when you're growing up, but like, I've pretty much worked for myself my whole life. Mm-hmm. And most people would say, oh, you're a control freak. That's why. And it's like, nah, really, I want to control my own schedule. I would rather work 120 hours a week to be able to take that 10-hour jaunt to the mountains when I want to, not when I can. I don't ever want to be that guy that has to go to somewhere, has to take my vacation at a certain time. Gives me just massive anxiety. How do you help people get over because I have some of them in my life where some people want to be entrepreneurs, then they think they're really not an entrepreneur, when in reality, the way they measure that entrepreneurship is with the wrong grade scale. Like, I'd like to know what you consider being an entrepreneur is and what you consider success, because I do really believe people have this, like, I almost have success in my failures. I'm almost like, okay, cool. If it goes right the first time, then I need to go back and try to break it so that I can make it better. Because I'm of the ilk of, like, you're never a one-shot, one-kill person every time. You've got to have some moments where you bleed, you cry, you scream in order for yourself to get better. So what do you measure success as, and how do you help other people come to that realization that they can be an entrepreneur and live their life the way they want?
So your first question about what I define an entrepreneur, I'm one of those people, if you're starting a business and it's some brick and mortar business and there are other brick and mortar business similar to yours, you're a business owner. You're not an entrepreneur. I think if you are, breaking into a new industry, creating a new solution for a common problem, if you are naming yourself a cannabis lifestyle guide and no one's ever heard of that, you know, you're an entrepreneur. You're creating something new. And the second part of your question was,
how do you help people define that and get over the hump of them not feeling like an entrepreneur? Because
so, I mean, I've felt like that a lot. I mean, I've even told you before, sometimes I feel like this is a glorified fucking hobby because I'm spending money and I'm not making money right now. You know, it's one of those things where you have to stick with it, look at yourself in the mirror and be who you want to be. You know, project future you, like fake it till you make it kind of a thing. Like, I am taking care of future Joe by spending money now to have a sound engineer. I'm taking care of future Joe and my future business by hiring a professional videographer. I may not be able to go out to fancy dinners or take extra vacations, but that to me is what's important right now for my future success. And that in and of itself makes you an entrepreneur. So sometimes it's just shifting your perspective of the things that you're doing and how you're seeing it, because sometimes we are our own worst enemy. And it's like, you know, the things that I hear in my head sometimes, I will think, would you say that to your best friend? Seriously. You know, we can say some really terrible shit to ourselves.
Yeah, people live in their heads. I mean, I just recently have had conversations with people that are low on confidence. And the first thing I go, let me tell you, number one, nobody gives a fuck what you think. Ever. They're too worried about what they're thinking. So that's number one. The minute you realize that everybody else is walking around in their own head, you're one step ahead of everybody.
And my sister has this one good piece of advice that she told me once. She's like, the calmest person in the room has the most power. And so I always try to be level-headed, to listen before I speak. You know, I have a terrible problem of interrupting people because, like you, we're both storytellers. We're both idea generators.
I think you told me to shut up twice already today.
I don't think I said shut up, though. I told you to probably be quiet.
You're so polite when you do it. And it's true, though. It's like, I think you are probably, we all both know a lot of people, but you're definitely one of the most genuine people I know. Like, all the time that I've known you, you've stayed the same kind of person. I've watched you grow to, you know, from basically somewhat of an idea to, you know, you've got a multitude of things that are starting to happen. And like we discussed a little bit before we jumped on, is time is really our only adversary. Even if you got money tomorrow, I know how you are, you're still going to try to maintain that growth ratio, because if you just go straight up, you might come right back straight down on your ass. And I know how you think. And so I really applaud how everybody can say, oh, you bootstrapped, that's awesome. It's so much more than that, because money does solve certain issues. We watch it. We see people make lots of mistakes in this space. But I don't really think that that's the only component of what makes things tick. I think it takes the ingredients that you're offering to the table in producing other people's podcasts, in going into these towns and wanting to do these cannabis lifestyle guide promotions, to just being a mentor to other women in the space, and really being true to your beliefs. Because that's another thing. People get I do believe, I kind of tell people all the time, they go, how things going? And I said, man, just going down the river, trying not to bump the bank. And that's really, most people have their paddles in the water and trying to stop because they don't even want to try to navigate. And I really applaud you for all that, because it isn't easy to do anything in this space, and it gets just exponentially harder as you pick the thing you want to do in the space, and then who you are. And then if you are a minority or a female, you got that stacked against you. Tell me a little bit about what's on the future for Joe.
Well, I will, and there's one little thing I want to add to that, is that in order for us to stay sane as entrepreneurs and to really help ourselves the most, I think it's important to really change our measure of success sometimes from day to day.
Absolutely.
You know, like being fluid with what we measure as success. Because to me, right now, if I were to die tomorrow, I know that I have made a positive impact with what I've built. Now, is my company making money yet? No. Is my company successful? Fuck yes, it is.
Absolutely. And I think in addition to that component is the day, you need to have bad days to have good days. Something one of my, relatives told me, it was his grandfather, he said, you don't know pleasure if you don't have pain.
Yeah.
And so if you aren't failing every single day, or in some capacity, or pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, like definitely don't get into cannabis because it's going to spin you around like a top.
Use it. Just don't get into the business.
Yeah, people ask me all the time, how do I get into the space? And I said, well, you can always start by investing. And I can give you some guidance on where you might want to put your money, or go buy cannabis stocks. I mean, I don't think there's anywhere that I don't walk around, and I'm sure it happens to you, where people aren't asking me a question about cannabis, or
totally.
How do I get in, or are you making, everybody has this, you're driving a Bugatti and you're living in the penthouse, and you're like, not really,
right.
know? So I'm going to tell you what I do every day. Okay. I try to eat well. I try to give myself credit. I try to provide some me time, because being married and having kids, sometimes that gets lost. So I always try to give myself some me time, whether it's surfing, whether it's just taking a walk, whatever, checking out for a moment. But then I also don't judge myself, really. I could die tomorrow, or this thing could all burn to the ground tomorrow, and I could look at every one of my investors and say, I did the best I could with what I had. Now, that doesn't mean that I'm stopping there. Every day, like I said, I get up and I look in the mirror and I just say, I got to push through today. I got to make sure that this day is the best day I can make it. But I'm also okay with if it's not. And then tomorrow we start over. What does that make? How do I make you feel when I say something like that?
Well, I'm just sitting here smiling at you, nodding. I mean,
sure.
I think that's such an important part of living a joyful life, and giving yourself the space to be great, or to fuck up, or, and to just kind of live between the lines. I mean, I think this is one of many lives that we will live.
Sure.
And I think Earth School is a great place to try and fail and try and fail.
I mean, just being a human is a blessing, number one. I think just the ability to do things like this, you just got to really take the opportunities as they come. Okay, where can we find you?
Yes. So I am at Casually Baked on all of the social mediums. So Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. I'm casuallybaked.com. You can find the podcast on any podcasting platform that you like, or you can just Google it. I have lovemaryjane.net. We didn't talk about that. That's another one of my shows.
We can give a couple minutes to that for sure.
Well, in my side hustle, while I'm still building my business, I am a relationship writer for an international matchmaking firm. And so one of my Cannabis Magazine clients had said, hey, can you put something together around cannabis and relationships? And just without even thinking, the words came out of my mouth. Yes, as long as it can be an advice column, and I can call it Love Mary Jane. And so I created this column, which I have since made into a podcast. And so it's all about exploring relationships in the modern cannabis culture, whether or not that's romantic relationships or family or community. I mean, there's a lot of stigma. And if you're a cannabis business owner and you're going to a PTA meeting, maybe there's issues. We don't know. So I've been answering questions, helping people just kind of...
Some of their more intimate, life-touching things,
yeah,
if you will.
I mean, stuff like talking to your kids about cannabis, or...
My spouse doesn't know I smoke a blunt every night, even though I smell like it when I walk back in the house.
Oh my gosh. Well, I had one man...
So they're both in denial.
...send me an email, right? saying like, hey, I'm going to be in Oregon for vacation. Can you please tell my wife that it's okay that we go to a dispensary?
Right.
Just like crazy shit like that, where you're like...
How fun. I mean...
It is so much fun.
It seems like that's like when you first told me about it, when we were visiting in Oakland, you had just started was that about right when you started putting it together?
Yeah.
And I remember I think you used the term like a Dear Abby style,
Yeah.
with a little bit more of an intimate twist. And I would tell us a little bit more about what that's done for you. Because on Casually Baked side, you're like informative. You're like, you got something you can really gnash your teeth into. Whereas with this, this other side, it's really more like they're bearing their souls kind of to you, like to answer like a question, like a definitely column-esque style.
Yeah.
Like that's got to be fun.
It's so much